All right, so thank you for joining us for the Great Backyard Bird Count webinar tonight. We just introduced Zoom a little bit, so let's dive into some of tonight's topics. So I'm coming to you from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, where our mission is to interpret and conserve the Earth's biological diversity through research, education, and citizen science focused on birds. My name is Kelly Schaefer, and I'm the Outreach Coordinator for the K-12 education team, where our mission is to create innovative resources and trainings that build science skills while inspiring young people to connect to local habitats, explore biodiversity, and engage in citizen science projects. We do this in two main ways. We create curricular resources that can be anything from kits, full science units to free downloadable activity guides and everything in between. And we also do a lot of professional development, both online and in person. And our philosophy really is based on these three pillars. We focus our resources and our trainings on nature connection, citizen science, and inquiry, all with the mind of helping young people increase their science identity while building a sense of place and a connection to their local environment. So one of the fun things I like to think about when I think about science identity is a drawing like this. So if you were to ask a typical third grader to draw a scientist, a lot of times you're going to get a drawing like this one. A gentleman in a lab coat with some beakers and chemicals, some equations on the board. Sometimes there's crazy hair. In this case, there's a pretty awesome mustache. And this is science, right? But it is a somewhat narrow conception of science. And we want to help students broaden their idea of what science is and who can be scientists. We want them to start viewing folks like these as scientists, people who are outside making observations of the natural world and asking questions and helping us understand how the world works a little bit better, all the way to viewing themselves as scientists as well. So kids are naturally curious. They have so many of the traits that make great scientists, and we can encourage those and help them to view themselves as scientists. So in this webinar, we're going to talk about the Great Backyard Bird Count and citizen science. And citizen science is one of the great tools, I think, to help kids change and broaden their view of themselves as scientists. So let's talk a little bit about what citizen science is. In the chat window, please feel free to share some ideas that come to mind when you hear citizen science. They can be keywords, a definition, maybe some projects you know. Collaboration, everyday people contributing to science. Seeing Project Feeder Watch come up a couple times. Frog Watch, absolutely. These are all projects. Research that can be conducted by members of the public. Everyday people noticing birds. Personal contribution to broader scientific studies. Also seeing a lot of great projects like Ebird, iNaturalist, Fish Watch, Monarch Watch. Awesome. Yes, this is so exciting to me. When I used to ask this question just 5 years ago when I started at the lab, I feel like the idea of citizen science or community-based science wasn't as much in our consciousness. And so it's really wonderful to see all these great answers from everyone. And you guys really got the heart of it in your suggestions. So when I think about citizen science, I think about an image like this. It's regular people helping put together the puzzle pieces of our world. And I like to think of it as being just a project in which you report your observations, you use some basic scientific protocols. And what's amazing about citizen science is the breadth of projects available, from all online to all outside, from the local to the global, from the scale of the universe to the scale of a microscope. And we at the lab really do view citizen science as a partnership between public volunteers and professional scientists that help us answer real world questions. And so what's great about this and using citizen science as a tool for education with kids is that it drives home the fact that what they're doing really matters. The data they're collecting has a purpose and is helping to answer relevant questions that we still have about our world. So as educators and folks working with kids, participating in the Great Backyard Bird Count or citizen science projects can really help us meet our science and learning standards. It's a really fun, exciting real-world opportunity to put skills into practice. It's an opportunity to study wild animals around you. It's pretty low cost. There's usually projects of all different kinds going on around the year. And it has the potential to spark kids' curiosity and help them build a lifelong interest in their local environment. So it's a really powerful tool for getting kids involved, for helping them feel empowered to change their world and understand their world. And as I mentioned, there's an incredible breadth of projects. So if birds aren't your thing, or they aren't the most compelling things for the kids you're working with, there are so many other opportunities out there. So I encourage you to find the project that's right for you and meets your students' abilities and interests. And to help you do that, there's a ton of great resources, which I will share in the chat window here in a moment. So there's the Citizen Science Association, and there is the organization SciStarter.org. And so SciStarter is really great because it lets you look up projects based on subject or the age group of the kids you're working with, or whether you want to be outside or inside. So I definitely recommend checking that out, and I will share a link to both of those websites in the chat window for you. So that is an overview of citizen science. Now we're going to dive into one of these amazing projects. So I would like to welcome Becca to the webinar tonight. Becca is the project leader for both the Great Backyard Bird Count and Nest Quest Go, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about the Great Backyard Bird Count and how you can participate.
Great, thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. And thank you for the nice introduction on citizen science. It's always good to refresh our memories about what we are doing. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And is everybody seeing that in full, or Kelly, I guess, can you see that in full screen? Okay.
Yep, it looks good to me.
Awesome, wonderful. So for those of you that are new to this project, I'm going to do a little bit of background, not too much, but a little bit about how the Great Backyard Bird Count came to be. The dates for this year's count, and it always fluctuates by the year. It generally runs in North America, or specifically more the United States, over President's Day weekend. So this weekend, or this particular year, it runs February 18 to the 21st, and it is 4 days. So it encompasses a Friday, generally when educators are in session with their youth, and it goes to a Monday. Most schools have that Monday off, some don't, but there is at least one school day where you could consider participating with your students, and then send them off for the weekend to go home and continue to participate participate from home if that's of interest. And I think Kelly is going to talk a little bit more about the logistics of that kind of engagement. But it is a 4-day event, and it literally is an opportunity to count and watch and celebrate birds wherever you are. If there is a bird around, we want to know about it and share in that joy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of locations of birding. And this particular event has been going on for a long time. We're actually celebrating our 25th year this year, which is very exciting. And it is a trifecta effort. So it is the lab working closely with the Audubon and Birds Canada to pull off this event. And I will talk a little bit more about the history, but we've really kind of grown in the last 25 years, and we are a global count at this point in time. We started out more nationally focused in the United States and then branched into Canada. And now we really are encouraging people from around the world to engage in this event with us. So the history of the count is really rooted in this one question, which is, will people watch birds, record what they see, and tell us about it? It seems sort of fundamentally obvious that perhaps the overwhelming answer is yes, but when we first asked this question, we weren't sure if that would be the case. We know people love birds, right? They're just cute and they're fun. And we know that people loved to watch them and participate in activities involving birds. So the answer did overwhelmingly become yes. And a lot of people don't realize, but the Great Backyard Bird Count predates Ebird. So the Great Backyard Bird Count was one of the first online projects that existed. We launched in about 1998, and we launched as a partnership between the lab and Audubon, and we were really only focused on North America. And needless to say, it was hugely popular. And the results of people actually contributing to data for this is what led to the development of tools like Ebird and Merlin, because we realized that we hit a sweet spot here and people were excited about this. And so it really was the first time that we could ask people in real time to share their data and then display that data back out to people, which was very exciting. And like I said, it led to the development of Ebird, which didn't actually, I know at this point in time, it feels like we've had Ebird forever, at least it feels that way to me, but it's a relatively new tool. It didn't start to become built until about 2002. And then we actually advanced our partnership with Birds Canada in 2009, which really allowed us to engage more audience within Canada, of which there may be people here tonight who are from Canada. And then in 2013, we became a global project, and people started to enter their data specifically into Ebird. So bird watching, as many of you know, is growing globally. And this is a fun interactive map. Each little yellow dot you see on the screen is somebody entering an Ebird checklist within a 24-hour period. So this is a 24-hour period. And you can just see how the world is literally glowing with people around the world who are passionate about birds and love them and want to tell us about it. So it's really been inspiring to be a part of projects at the lab and the Audubon, where we're just seeing this overwhelming international passion for a bird that is so charismatic and affects and interacts with so many people around the world in different places. So last year, we had a very successful year with GBBC. We had over 300,000 people participate, and we had 2,000, we had over almost 400,000 Ebird checklists, and we had well over 400,000 Merlin IDs. And for those of you who have been doing GBBC for several years, Merlin is a newer tool that we added to our toolkit. And if you're working with youth or first-time birders, I highly recommend using Merlin for your bird entries, because that's just a much easier interface to engage with for the first time if you're a first-time birder. And I think that Kelly will talk you through that a little bit more. So what do you do? It's actually pretty straightforward what you do for GBBC, which is one of the reasons why it's such a great project as a beginner. We literally just ask people to watch and count birds anywhere that they are for at least 15 minutes during one period of time in those 4 days. And this, you're not limited to once. So you could count every day, you could count multiple times a day. It's really up to you, but at least 15 minutes at some point, either on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, which is what it runs in North America. Sometimes those days are a little different depending on where in the world you find yourself. And you can count for longer than 15 minutes. I like to sit and have my morning cup of coffee and tally birds for as long as I want to be sitting there watching them. So you can count for longer. You're not limited to 15 minutes. But when you enter your birds, specifically in eBird, you will tell us how long you were counting. So you want to keep track of that length of time that you're watching and the location in which you're watching. Those are really important for eBird. The location is critically important for Merlin, but usually most phones will pick up the location for you. And we'll talk a little more about that as we progress here. And you're estimating the number of individual species observed. So a lot of people say, oh, well, if I sit and watch my feeder, how do I know if it's a same or a different chickadee that's coming back and forth in that 15-minute period of time? And that's a completely valid answer. And the answer is you don't always know. So you're using tallies and you're just making a guesstimate based on what you're seeing. We know as scientists that there's going to be some error and some possible duplication, and we have ways of dealing with that when we actually are doing the data cleaning. So don't get too stuck on how many, just give us an estimate based on what you see. And then you can enter just one bird. Merlin is a great tool for just doing one bird at a time, or you can list them totally out in eBird. It really depends. One or a lot, we want them all. It doesn't matter. Don't feel constrained by only knowing one bird and sharing that. That's wonderful. That's a great place to participate. And then you can, like I said, participate more than once over those 4 days if you would like. And this is the part of it that I think is fun and why it's really popular. You can do this wherever you are. You don't need to go out on a formal birding trip to participate in this event. You could literally sit and enjoy the birds that come and visit your balcony or your yard or your front yard, wherever you are in your home environment. Backyards are common. That's kind of where the name originally came from, but we've expanded that concept of backyard to be really, we all have yards, right? It could be our community park. It could be our schools. These are all parts of our yards, so to speak, our global yards. If you have just a patio or a porch, we'd love to know what you're seeing on your patio and porch. If you're in more of an urban environment, tell us what's on your streets. It's amazing the amount of diversity that can be found all over. So don't feel limited if you live in an area where you're seeing a lot of pigeons and maybe a lot of starlings. That's wonderful. Tell us about them. Parks are a great place to see birds, so tell us what you see there. Nature centers, if you're an informal educator, this is a great activity to engage people in. So the answer is anywhere. And just like last year, we had this for this year. We were hoping maybe we could diverge away from it, but we are still in the middle of a pandemic, so please be very conscientious about where you're birding. If you're in a community space, be mindful of other people, protect yourself, protect other people, wear masks and social distance when you are engaging in this activity. One of the common questions we get is, why do this? And Kelly touched a little bit on this in terms of citizen science, why we have citizen science projects. Aside from the fact that it's just really fun and easy and a great way to spend your time, there's a lot of other things that are beneficial about this project. It really does connect you in a deep way to nature. Birds are I sometimes jokingly say, birds are like a gateway drug to nature, right? Like they're just so animated and they're so charismatic that you can just watch them and they kind of pull you in and you feel yourself wanting to understand more about them. So it's a great way to connect. And there's actual scientific evidence that says that connection evokes happiness. Like people that spend more time watching birds in particular, and this is true for other aspects of nature engagement, are just happier people. And that makes a lot of sense to me. In addition to that, your observations make a big difference for science. We can take these observations and do analysis with them and actually answer big scientific questions, or at least get closer to answering big scientific questions. And one of the benefits of having a project like this that has gone for 25 years is that we have long-term data. This is longitudinal data that we can analyze and know more about populations of birds over time. And one of the big reasons why citizen science has taken off in lots of different avenues is because scientists cannot be everywhere all the time collecting data. There are scientists everywhere all the time, but it's much more engaging to ask people to be a part of that scientific process with us and share in that data collection and observation. So you might ask yourself, who are people that are doing this count? And the answer is a lot, and it's very diverse. We have sometimes people that are the hardcore bird. I like to call them the hardcore birders. They have the highest tech equipment, cameras and telescopes, and they're going to all corners to capture those birds and maybe expand their lifer list. We have people that are using just binoculars, right? Like sometimes not binoculars. Some people are just using their eyes and just noticing what's around them. We have people that have become very good friends with the birds in their community, so much so that they will land on them when they are birding, which I think is hilarious. We have farmers who are out in their fields and taking notes of the birds while they're cultivating their fields in February, mostly in warmer places, obviously not up where we are in Ithaca. We have parents out with kids using this as an opportunity to get their kiddos outside in February, families going out together. We have community groups that get together and do this as a part of bonding and bringing people together. Schools and educational centers are doing this with their youth. And I will say all these pictures are pre-COVID. So I apologize that you're not seeing a lot of masking, but a lot of people are doing this safely in small groups with masks as well. And then people who are just at home that have feeders and are watching and counting over the weekend. So the people that participate in this project are quite diverse. And what do we actually learn with this data? We can learn lots of different things, and really that's only limited by the scientist that's asking the questions. We've been able to document migration patterns of birds and how those migration patterns might be shifting and changing. You might think to yourself, well, February seems early for migration, and it is a little bit early. We're right before that sort of March uptick when birds start to move more in March, April, and of course May and early June. But there is a lot we can kind of know about where birds are and where they aren't, and then use that data to understand what birds have moved where during the end of migration. And we do another big count in May. So we do several big counts along strategic times in the year to ask this question about where birds are and where they aren't. We can see changes from year to year. So one year there might be a huge flock of red-winged blackbirds, for example, in Nova Scotia in February. And we might ask, wow, that's a lot of birds in a relatively cold area. I wonder why. And then we may or may not see them the next year. So noticing these big changes is really important. And then long-term trends, of course, for projects like this one. And here's one of the most impressive things. All of this data, whether you submit it through Merlin or Ebird, exists in the same database that we will pull data from when scientists are asking questions. And just in 2021 alone, Ebird data, which this project contributes towards, was used in 142 publications. That is an immense amount of publications just for 1 year where people are actually using this data. So, with your family or your classroom on a weekday or weekend entering this data, that is the huge impact that you're going to have, is this capacity to have your observations be a part of actual scientific research. And that is pretty phenomenal and fun, especially for young people to understand. The tools to participate, I'm just going to go through them very broad strokes, and then Kelly is going to get more into the details of them. But there are basically 3 ways to actually enter your data. Like I said, Merlin Bird ID is probably the most straightforward for people that are new to this program and have access to a smartphone. The app is free and downloadable, but you do need to obviously have a smartphone. And you really very basically walked through 3 major questions in addition to your location, which is usually picked up automatically. The tool is going to ask you, what are the colors of the birds that you're seeing? Where are you seeing them? Trees, bird feeders, etc. And it will give you, and what the bird was doing. And then it will give you a list of options. And from those options, generally speaking, with a lot of accuracy, you will figure out what bird it is that you are watching. You may already know what bird it is that you're seeing, but it's kind of fun to walk through the workflow and see if it actually is true. Now, keep in mind that Merlin is a one bird at a time system, and you can't tell us how many. So for people that are new to birding, just IDing a bird and telling us they saw one, it's called what's called an incidental sighting. So we know that that species of bird was seen there at that time. And that's valuable data, believe it or not. If you want to get into more details and tell us the numbers of birds and tell us more than just one bird, Ebird Mobile is probably your second go-to tool. Again, pretty straightforward and easy to use and 100% free. These two tools on your phone together are magic. So if you are going to, do multiple entries over GBBC weekend, I would recommend you downloading both of these tools early ahead of time. Have your classrooms or informal participants, if possible, download these tools ahead of time, send out an email with a link for how to do that, which you can find on our website or the K-12 website. And then last but not least, you can enter your data using eBird, but on a computer or a laptop. And it is a similar workflow to the mobile phone, but with some subtle differences. And this might be a better option for those people that don't have access to smartphones, or maybe don't want to use them with their group or with their family. Entering them via computer is 100% okay as well. And I think Kelly's going to go a little bit more into detail about those 3 tools. And then the last thing I wanted to share is something new this year. And this is a little for those of you that might want to go above and beyond and maybe consider this event as a part of a larger service learning activity. We've begun a light partnership with an organization called Birdability. And there's a link there at the bottom of the page that talks a little bit more about this relationship with GBBC. But Birdability is a fabulous organization that's relatively new this year. They've been around for a little while, but they're really gaining some traction, where they want to make public birding literally more available to everybody, no matter what their access challenges are, whether they're mobility or mental or visual or auditory. We really want birding to be something that everybody can do. But it's not always easy to know where people can go in order to bird safely, based on whatever their needs are. And so Birdability is about mapping. And so let's say, for example, you're going to take a group of youth to a public park. You could also have that group make observations about what that public park has or doesn't have. Do they have gravel walkways? Do they have cedar chip walkways? Do they have paved walkways? And then go back and map, or add that location, I should say, to the map. So on the left-hand side here is an example of the different locations around North America, and they do have some global, but not a ton. We'd like to help them grow their global locations. So people who have access challenges can go and look up and figure out whether sites are safe and basically available to them to participate in birding. So this would be an added part of participating in the Great Backyard Bird Count. But for those of you who have students that are really ambitious, or if you really want to contribute to this effort, we are very excited to partner with Birdability this year. And again, the website on the bottom there, you can find some more information about this effort this year. So that is a very quick overview of the Great Backyard Bird Count. We have lots of resources like this beautiful poster that you can download and post in your schools. We have a presentation that you can share out if you want to share out to your class. There's a pre-created PowerPoint that you can share out, and there's social media things, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a lot of things on our website. If you go to our website, which is birdcount.org. You can also write down my email address, gbbbc@birds.cornell.edu, and send questions my way. And I would be happy to answer them. If you are thinking about this now, you're ahead of the game, because we still are almost a month away. So we can get things lined up for you so that you have a very smooth count. And I will go ahead and stop my share there. Kelly, did you want me to stay on, or are you good to take over?
Hi, Becca. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I'm good to take over. Thank you so much for your time and for giving us this amazing introduction to Great Backyard Bird Count.
Thanks for having me. Have a great night, everyone.
All right. So I love hearing Becca talk about the GBBC. She really just does such a wonderful job. So let me restart my screen share here in just a second. All right. All right, sorry for the delay. Hopefully you're seeing my screen again. Oh no, what's that? You don't need presenter view. Oh, sorry, everybody. We're going to try that again. I should be able to swap it. Okay. Is that looking good to everyone there?
That looks good to me.
Oh, thank you, Becca. All right. So Becca gave us this really amazing introduction to the Great Backyard Bird Count. And one of the ways that, or one of the things I wanted to highlight for folks today is ways that we can prepare and be ready to head out and be good scientists. So I wanted to take a moment and just brainstorm with you all. What are some skills that you think would make a good citizen science? Excuse me, good citizen scientist. Curiosity, absolutely. Listening, being observant, persistence, sure. A love of learning, being observant, and being investigative, looking closely, being precise. Yeah, these are all really amazing ideas. Discovery, documentation, that's a really important part too. Yeah, and so when Becca was talking about the Great Backyard Bird Count, she talked about collecting and sharing data, which would be that documentation piece, sharing what you see and what you know. But I love seeing this idea popping up again and again in your ideas of curiosity, looking closely, and being observant. And I think those are really great skills that we can build up. So we've got a month before the Great Backyard Bird Count comes into play. So I want to take a moment and dive into this idea of how we can prepare as good citizen scientists. And one of the things we can do is build our observation skills. We can also do some activities to practice our bird ID. You guys also talked about precision and accuracy. So we can practice some of those skills to make sure we're identifying birds. And we can get to know the local birds that will be around us, so we have a better idea of what we might be seeing. And so for this next portion, I'm going to share with you some observation activities, some resources that you can use to build your bird ID skills. And we're going to do a little run through of some Merlin Bird ID app tips and tricks that I have for you all. So observation skills are really important. This ability to look closely is one of the most important tools in a scientist tool set. And we can do some really fun and simple activities to build those skills. One of my favorites is just doing a rainbow hike. So if you want your kids to participate in the Great Backyard Bird Count, having them go outside and build these skills can be really fun. So the idea behind a rainbow hike is that you go outside, find all the colors of the rainbow in nature, as many as you can. This is a little extra challenging in winter in particular parts of the world. Right now, we've got about 7 or 8 inches of white on the ground. But if you look really closely, you can find most of the colors of the rainbow even right now. And you can expand on this activity by having kids draw one of the things they find. Another great resource for building some observation skills is our Bird Sleuth Explorers Guidebook. I will share a link to this in the chat window in a moment. This guidebook is available as a free download. It's got 6 different activities that are written at the 4th grade level. It can be done independently for kids who are 4th grade or older or at that reading level, or it can be done as a guided activity. Let me just put that in the chat window for you there. And it has one of my very favorite nature exploration activities in it called a sound map. So you can identify birds by their song, which is really fun and really amazing, but it's definitely a skill to learn. And one of the first things to do is just get practice listening outside. And so I love this activity. It is pretty simple. You grab a sheet of paper, you put an X in the middle to represent where you are standing outside, and then you give yourself maybe 10 minutes to draw or write or represent everything that you hear on your map. So you're going to try and do both direction and distance. And it's super fun. You might notice things that you've never noticed before. When I was working with high schoolers in northern Wisconsin, we had some students there for this semester who lived in Texas. And so they never really been in snow before. And so they were amazed just to hear the snowflakes lightly landing on their jackets. So it's just this really cool way to tune into everything that's happening around you. It also has the classic habitat scavenger hunt in there, getting you outside looking for components of habitats. And there's really fun ways that you can kind of deepen this activity. You can ask some fun discussion questions afterwards, including things like, could everything that you found today in this habitat be found in a different one? Could you find it in the desert? Could you find it in a swamp? Just a fun way to think about different habitats and what is in them. Another resource I wanted to highlight for you is Cooped Up Kids. This is a recent resource from us. It is all online through Google Slideshows. There's an adult-facing doc that has some facilitator instructions for you. And the Google Slideshows can be downloaded and shared through whatever learning platform you're using if you're doing any kind of remote or blended teaching. And the slides they're fun, they're colorful, they have lots of great content, but they also have activities to get you up and moving and exploring outside and inside. And they are on a variety of themes from bird diversity to bird ID and behavior, conservation, bird superpowers, a lot of fun things in this set of activities. And I'll share a link to those for you in the chat window as well. So I just wanted to go over some of the ways that we approach teaching bird ID. So these activities are grade banded. So we have activity 5 is bird identification, and there is a K2 version, a 3-5 version, and a 6-8 version. So you can choose whatever matches the age of your students or the kids that you're working with. And so we approach bird ID through the children's book, Crow Not Crow, for the K2 age group. Super fun book about learning to identify birds and starting from a really simple place of, is it a crow or not a crow? And the book walks you through how to use that method. And you can watch a reading of that book from our friend Leo at the lab. And once you move into the older age groups, we start breaking things down a little bit more. We get into the 4 clues to bird ID, which include size and shape, color pattern, behavior, and habitat and range. And it may sound kind of counterintuitive, but when you first look at a bird, you might notice color, but bird ID experts actually recommend that you look at size and shape. And if you look at this GIF of the heron here, you can see it fading into a silhouette, which really highlights the shape. If you just saw that silhouette, you would think, oh, long legs, long neck, sharp beak, heron. You might be able to get to the group of bird just by looking at the shape before you get distracted by the colors. So if you can get a bird to its group, you have a better shot of identifying it. And so let's look at that and some silhouettes here. This is one of the activities from the Cooped Up Kids lesson on bird ID. Let's look at number 1. What group of birds do you think is represented by silhouette 1? Owl. Yeah. We see a really upright posture. We've got a couple of ear tufts up there. So yeah, it could be a great horned owl. Absolutely. What about something like number 2 right up here? What group would you put number 2 in? Ducks, absolutely. We've got that wide flat bill. We've got some webbed feet and that little stout posture. Very cool. What if we jump over to number 6? What group of birds would you put number 6 in? Hawks, birds of prey, predators. Yeah. Some of our soaring birds are raptors, right? Yes. So you can start to see how just looking at the silhouette of a bird or the size and shape of a bird can help you with bird identification. For the ones that we didn't get to, you can see the answers here. I saw some folks guessing in the chat window. And you can even start to see some really fine detail looking at just the shape of the bird. So let's just for fun, see if we can match this picture of a blue jay to its silhouette. Do you think it's in the upper left hand, the upper right hand, the lower right hand, or the lower left hand? Seeing a lot of upper lefts. Why did you choose what you chose? Looking at the size and shape of the beak, nice. The crest and the beak. The body to tail ratio, awesome. Crest shape matches, sure. Posture is a good one, okay. Yeah, so if we look at these and we break it down, we can see that the upper left hand is our blue jay. And if you look at our other silhouettes, this upper right hand one is a cardinal. It's got a nice thick beak and a skinnier crest. Down here on the lower right hand, we have a tufted titmouse, which is much smaller relatively and has a short beak. And then this bird on the lower left is very slender with a thin crest. Cedar waxwing, you got it. And then just to give you an idea of how we kind of up the level for the 6th through 8th graders, this is a challenge from there, challenging them to use Merlin bird ID to identify these different birds from real photos. Another great way to get to know the birds that are going to be around you and prepare for the Great Backyard Bird Count is to choose some focus birds. So if you have a class of kids that you're working with, a great approach would be to assign each kid a common local bird and have them write down the name of the bird, create a scientific drawing, label some field marks or clues to identification on their drawings, and then listen to the sounds of their bird and add some cool natural history facts. So kind of like a short little bird report with a gorgeous picture. And what that does is if you have a class of 20 kids, you have 20 little experts on one bird. So when you go out as a group, you have a pretty good shot at identifying some of the birds around you. I love doing this activity. It's always fun to see the kids' drawings, and I think kids get excited when they have their focus bird and they actually get to see it outside. It's a really fun moment. And then you can use those to create your own classroom field guide. Another great resource I wanted to share with you is allaboutbirds.org. This is essentially an online field guide. It's a great resource for researching birds around you. So if you were to do that project, that focus bird project, this would be a great place to come to look for some of those cool life history facts and even to find out some important ID tips. And then as Becca mentioned, Merlin is probably one of the very best tools out there. It is free. And I'd like to take a moment to go through some ways that you can use it. So I'm going to stop this. I'm going to get out of the PowerPoint here. And I'm going to, hopefully you're seeing on my screen, and I would love it if somebody could say yes, the projection from my phone. It should say Merlin. Awesome. Excellent. So here are some different ways that you can use the Merlin Bird ID app. So the main way that most folks are going to use it is they're going to hit Start Bird ID. And what that will do is take you through 5 questions that are going to help you identify a bird. So I'm going to go ahead and select current location. The first one is where you are. The second one is the date. I'm going to go ahead and let it be today. And I'll hit next. The next question is going to be, excuse me, the next question is going to be the size of a bird. And we're looking on a scale of common birds. So starting all the way down at sparrow size, so our smallest birds. Then we have a robin, a crow, and a goose. So some pretty common birds whose size you're probably fairly familiar with. And then all of these little sizes in between. So I'm going to go ahead and answer these questions with a blue jay in mind, and we'll see if we can get there. So I'm going to say that the blue jay is maybe between a robin and a crow. And then I'm going to hit next. And then I'm going to say I saw blue and white. You can pick up to 3 colors, but if you really only saw one, you can go ahead and try with that. And then I'm going to hit next. And so this last question gets at both kind of habitat and behavior. So it's going to ask you where you saw the bird, what was it doing? Eating at a feeder, swimming or wading, on the ground, in trees or bushes, on a fence or wire, or soaring or flying. And the one I saw today was in a pine tree. So I'm going to select this option, in trees or bushes, and I'm going to hit identify. And then you will see a list of possible birds. So here we have our first option was indeed the blue jay. Trying to get it to, if you're on your phone, you can swipe, but because I'm doing this through my computer, it's a little, I can't show you all the different pictures, but there are different pictures there, so you could just swipe to see them. You can also hit this info button, say you heard it, but and you want to see if maybe this bird sounds like the one you heard, you can play that call. And you can even like look at a map and make sure that it's in your area at the right time so it seems right to you. And you can also see that there's a couple other suggestions here, like a belted kingfisher or a Cooper's hawk, a pigeon, and some ducks and things. So what Merlin does is it narrows down the number of birds you need to look at. So like a typical list of birds, if you go through this, is going to be somewhere from like 5 to 12. So instead of picking up a whole field guide and having to start from there, Merlin's going to help you narrow it down, as it helped us get to this blue jay. I'm going to go ahead and hit the home button and take us back to the main screen. There's also a really cool photo ID option, which I won't go into detail in today. It can be really hard to get a picture of a bird. So I'm going to focus on the other options. One of my favorite ways, especially if I'm planning a unit I'm going to be teaching in a couple of months, is to use the Explore Birds function. So let me hit that. Right now, I have it showing all of the installed birds. Now, the bird heads are cut off just because of the way I'm sharing the screen with you. But if you were doing this on your phone, you'd be able to see their faces. So this is kind of just like your generic field guide. So you could search for a bird, say I wanted to search for that blue jay. I could start typing it and it's going to pop up, and I can click on this and see all the things that we saw when we were using the other method of identification. And so it's great for that. It's great for looking up a bird you want to know more about. But my favorite way to use the Explore function is to go to this menu right here in the upper right-hand corner. It's going to look a little different on iPhone, but it will be kind of the 3 lines or a slider, and it's going to be in the same position. Click on that, and you'll see the option to filter by. Right now it says bird pack, which is all the birds I have on my phone, but I'm going to switch it to say likely birds. And then I'm going to change it to be my current location. And then I'm going to have to go back in and change the date to today. And then you'll see that there's some options down here to sort it by. I like to sort by most likely. So what that's going to do is tell me that, like, if I were to walk out today when it was still the daytime and do a bird count, those would be the birds that I would be most likely to see. And I did a little bird count earlier today. So let's see if some of the birds I saw were on there. So on my bird count, I did have an American crow, I did have a black-capped chickadee, a dark-eyed junco, a northern cardinal, and a blue jay, and a white-breasted nuthatch. So I had several of the top 10 on my count today. And so this is really fantastic, because if you want to learn like 10 birds before the Great Backyard Bird Count, you could set the date to February 18, the first day of the count, and get to know the 10 or 12 most likely birds that you're going to see if you do a count on that day, so that when you do the count that day, you're going to be prepared. This is also a great way if you're going to do the focus bird in your classroom of choosing the birds to assign. So definitely recommend checking out the sort by likely bird for your area. It's super, super useful. Great way to get to know your birds. All right, and then now I have to share the most recent part of Merlin, which is going to be this option right here, sound ID. Yes, I see some people in chat anticipating it. I do want to give you a heads up. If you don't have Merlin yet, it's kind of a multiple part download. So you'll want to go into your app store, you'll want to search Merlin Bird ID and download the app. And you are not ready to go outside and start identifying birds at that point. You need to open it and choose a bird pack. I have all of Canada and the US online, but you can choose just a regional pack. So you might have like Northeastern Canada or the Northeastern US as a pack that you can choose. And you can do that if you only bird around you, you might not want to take up a bunch of room on your phone. So that allows you to kind of pick and choose how big you want the app to be. And then if you want to do Sound ID, you have to download that separately too. And that again just allows you to not have this enormous app on your phone unless you want to use those features. I think Sound ID is pretty awesome. So we're going to try it out. I'm going to hit the Sound ID button. And then the first thing you do is you're going to hit this microphone button. So over here, you might see I have a player. I'm going to go ahead and play this sound. I actually don't know which one I have open. So let's see if we can get Merlin to identify. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it. Did you notice? Yeah, so I'm sorry, the picture here, I don't know why it's showing a cardinal. It is not a cardinal. This is a nuthatch recording. You can see the white-breasted nuthatch name right up here. So this is going to provide you some options that it heard. I don't know if you heard the crow very quietly in the background, but it was there. So what Merlin Sound ID does is it converts sound into a spectrogram, which is this up here. Let me get it to play for a second. So right here we see the spectrogram or the visual representation of the white-breasted nuthatch song. So that's what it looks like. And so the program isn't actually identifying the sound, it is identifying the spectrogram. So it's looking at the sound and matching that to what it knows those spectrograms look like. So I think that's pretty cool. One of my tips for you though is if you are using Merlin Sound ID, double check the identifications every once in a while because it's looking at the spectrogram and trying to identify sound by sight. It can give you something a little bit wacky. So I always recommend once you've stopped your recording, you've got these matches, click on it, your match here, and play the sound. And so that will confirm, yes, okay, I agree, that was a white-breasted nuthatch. Just that extra little step is great for the data accuracy here. So there's a comment in the chat window that Google Lens is a way to also identify bird sounds. I'm not familiar with that. Apparently it's pretty accurate, so that's really cool. Definitely check that out too. Anything that helps us make better IDs and get to know the sound of our local birds better is pretty cool in my book. Okay. So that is our quick Merlin overview here. Let me make sure. Okay, so we're going to skip some of this stuff here because we are running out of time and I want to make sure we get a chance to ask questions if we need to. Oh, it's going to make me do this all over again. All right, we're not going to mess with that. Apologies. Technical difficulties. So I did want to bring to mind these 7 simple actions here. This was put together in response to a paper that showed that we were losing a large amount of birds in the the last 50 years. And the organizations, the lab, the Audubon Society, people who came together and care about birds wanted to put out some actions that we could all take in our daily lives to help make things better for our local birds. And that includes doing citizen science. So by participating in something like the Great Backyard Bird Count, you are helping birds. These citizen science databases are what help us see trends and changes in populations across the world and help us know when we need to take conservation action. It's also going to be the data that helps us know when those conservation actions work. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to share. I am going to try and get that screen back up because I do want you to be able to contact us if you have questions. Let's see if we can't get this working properly one more time. So if you're an educator and you would like a letter of completion for one contact hour, you can email us at k12lab@cornell.edu. That will let me know that you'd like the letter and we can get that out to you. The recording is going to be up on our YouTube channel, which should be up by the end of the week. And if you were registered for the event, which you all are because you're here, you will get the link sent to you. So you'll get an email with all of the relevant links to websites that we talked about today and resources that we talked about today, as well as the recording. I'm gonna scroll back through in case I missed some questions, but if I missed you, please feel free to reiterate yourself. The chat goes by pretty quick sometimes. Thanks so much for coming. Glad you were able to find some useful tips and tricks despite having done GBBC before. Kathleen, if you could shoot me an email that you would like a letter of completion, that'll just make sure that I get it to you and it doesn't slip off my radar and I know where to send it. Yes, so you can download the 7 Simple Actions poster. The website is going to be, I think it's 7simpleactions.org. Let me see if I can pull it up. All right, so 3billionbirds.org/7simpleactions will talk to you about it. I think there's a link to the infographic here. I'll put that in the chat window. Natalie, you were asking about teens doing bird surveys or sound surveys / recordings. I mean, through citizen science, yeah, folks of any age can participate in bird research. Ebird would be a great place to go for submitting more regular bird counts. It's a every part of the year project. So that might be a place to go. And then you can also submit sound recordings through Ebird, which would become part of the Macaulay Library database. Great point, Kathleen. Kathleen's pointing out that if you're an educator and you're working with groups and could use a little help, to contact your local Audubon club for support. Yeah, Audubon clubs, maybe even a local nature center if there isn't a club nearby. Definitely don't hesitate to reach out. In my experience, bird nerds are happy to share the nerdery. All right. Well, if you have any further questions, please feel free to email us at k12lab@cornell.edu. And we'll be happy to get back to you. Debbie, yeah, the certificate would be a PDF.